The world's richest and bravest players are competing in poker's most elite final table. And tonight, we crown our champion. This is WPT Alpha 8. Welcome to the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino and what has become the biggest pressure cooker in South Florida, the A8 final table. The game we play here is Texas Hold'em and the stakes are high. The buy-in for this event was a cool $100,000, making the field a who's who of high-rolling poker pros and affluent amateurs. We started with 21 entries and are down to the final few who have a real chance at making their six-figure risk really pay off for them. A8's own Ali Najad and Olivier Bousquet have a bird's-eye view of all the action from the ClubWPT.com skybox. Good evening, guys.
Good evening to you, Lynn. We started our event with 18 players. The final table was met at 8, and now we're down to just 5 hopefuls. Olivier, who do you like out of this field?
Well, my money is on Isaac Haxton. Not only is Ike our current chip leader, but he's also a phenomenal player. Also, Jeff Gross and Steve Silverman are very tough pros. They have a little bit less experience than the other 3, so it'll be really interesting to see how they deal with the pressure in this moment. JC Tran and Matt Glantz are seasoned veterans, and I expect them to rise to the occasion as they've done in the past.
Now, we have a little bit of a wrinkle on our hands here. 5 players, only 4 spots are getting paid. $250,000 to 4th place and $0 to 5th. How does that play out in the action?
Right. This is what we in poker call the money bubble. It's one of the most exciting stages in tournament poker. Like you said, 4 of the 5 remaining players will end up divvying up over $2 million in prize money, and 1 of our remaining players will go home with nothing.
Let's take a look at the chip counts as action gets underway here. Current chip leader is Isaac Haxton, as you mentioned, $687,000 in front of him. Not far behind is Matt Glantz with $587,000. Then you've got JC Tran in 3rd and a couple of stacks that are pretty close in size, and Jeff Gross and Steven Silverman, 4th and 5th respectively. The blinds at 6 and 12K, the ante at 2K. Couple of folds in front of Matt Glantz, who kicks off the action, raising to $25,000. And Isaac folded the small blind. It's over to Jeff Gross with 10-9 suited, certainly playable out of the big.
The suited connector actually plays really well. I think most players would defend here from the big blind.
Can't imagine a fold.
All in.
Oh, but an all-in, that's a little unexpected.
270?
I think 260, so.
Jeff Gross showing right off the bat that he is not afraid.
You're good. You're good.
I like this play by Jeff for 2 reasons. First, he's going to get a lot of credit from his opponents. And second, if he does run into a monster, his hand actually plays pretty well.
Glantz laid down the ace-9. Jeff was dominated, certainly sent a message there. JC Tran with queen-10 offsuit raises to $25,000. Matt Glantz folds, and Isaac Haxton with a couple of 7s.
All in.
Moves all in, and Jeff Gross in the small blind looks at ace-king offsuit.
Ike, having a pretty strong hand and a dominant chip position, deciding to put pressure on the rest of his opponents, putting them to a decision for their entire tournament life. And Jeff here, with ace-king offsuit, is in quite a predicament, a very tough spot.
This is getting comical every hand, so.
You seem to have pulled back a chip from your small blind.
This is true.
With ace-king, I don't know what I would do. I'd probably take a long time, probably eventually call, but this is a really tough spot here.
Sorry, when you guys see my hands, you'll understand.
Jeff really deliberating here, referring to what he considers a number of difficult decisions that he's had to deal with in this tournament. It's pretty common when you're playing with such a tough level of competition that you're going to be put to real tough decisions. Jeff ultimately deciding to play it safer and folding ace-king.
I want that hand.
Let's go, Jeff.
Jeff, you really can't talk about how difficult your decision is when there are people left to act. It really changes what JC calls with if you call after you talk about how close and hard it is.
But it doesn't, like the difference between a mid-pair, like a big ace, how's it?
Jeff, what happened to Leroy Jenkins?
It's about, yeah, I should have Leroyed it.
Come on, Craig.
Our 9th place finisher, Bill Perkins, hanging out offset. Gross is actually his coach, but looks like Perkins has given him a pointer or two, saying he should have Leroyed it there, referring, of course, to the viral video entitled Leroy Jenkins. Just watch it.
All right, Jeff, on the start. Steve with the small blind, JC with the big blind, and it's folded.
I was just thinking, let me have your hand.
Yeah, you would have done something different. You would have done something
I just like to
different.
gamble a little more, I guess. No, you're in a tough spot for sure.
Action has been folded around to Jeff Gross, who's given his chewing gum a workout.
All in.
And with ace-jack offsuit, he's a little bit more comfortable in this situation, opening up the betting, moving all in for over $300,000.
So again, we see the difference with him as the aggressor, deciding to play it a little safe, not see a flop.
You're right, though. I shouldn't say it. Sorry.
It's okay. I mean, I understand it.
I mean, I think it's pretty. Obviously, I take that long. I mean, it's a pretty tough decision, but you're right. So.
No, it's not so much what happens if you take that long and then fold, but if you take that long and then call, it's a lot easier for JC to call with jacks or tens than if you.
I see your point. I'm just saying it's like, in my mind, I'm looking at like it's it's obviously they're like.
Yeah, but he
whatever.
could be saying the same thing with queens.
Yeah.
It's not easy for me to.
It's not like he knows I have either a big ace or I have a pretty big pair. It's like, but a player as sharp as JC, I don't think it matters. But you're right. In a normal scenario, it might influence.
So the player's talking about the etiquette. Ike making the point that you want to keep the information to yourself, not give the other players a clue as to what your hand might be.
So, I can't wait to hear from my friends about this one. They're probably having a field day in there, especially to you, but
all in.
Action is folded around to JC Tran, who moves all in with an ace-jack offsuit of his own.
Matt Lance without a decision in the big blind with just 9-3 offsuit.
JC will start the hand with the button.
And it's another tour of duty with ace-king offsuit for Jeff Gross. He's had some premium hands to start off the action this evening. And Jeff has raised it up.
Jeff's open the pot for 28,000.
Jeff Gross has some experience in big buy-in events. $10,000 2012 World Series of Poker heads up. He finished 8th. In 2013, he played the 6-handed event, $25,000 buy-in, finishing 12th.
It's like Ike's chosen to defend with ace-10 of diamonds.
Isaac's going to make the call.
And not the best board texture for ace-king as the flop comes 7-4-8. Ace-10 suited, certainly not thrilled with the board either, as Ike checks it over to Jeff, who checks behind. And the turn card, a 5 of hearts. There's a wet board.
Yeah, if I'm Jeff and I decided not to take a shot here on the flop, I'm probably just giving up and going to fold to any further aggression.
Looks like Haxton has the same idea in his head and is looking to take advantage by putting a bet out there with what is, of course, the worst hand.
Ike taking advantage both of his chip position and the weakness that Jeff showed on the flop. I like this bet here, even without a lot of equity. He's just in a position to put a lot of pressure on Jeff. Not sure why Jeff decided to call there with just ace-king and no heart.
7 of hearts.
Well, he may have had a plan as the 4th heart rolls off, pairing the board, and Haxton checks over to him. Gross can't imagine ace-king offsuit is good.
Oh, but I think I remember I had a heart.
I agree. If I was Jeff and I decided to call on the turn and the river was another heart and my opponent checked, I wouldn't expect my ace-king to be good enough of the time here.
Check.
Oh, and Gross just checks back. He'll be pleased to see Ike roll over ace-10 of diamonds, but more often than not, ace-king will be no good in that spot.
Didn't have a heart. I thought I had one.
I thought you had one too.
Yeah, and you see Ike surprised at the way Jeff played this hand.
Well, at least I didn't shove pre, because I would have called there.
I believe it.
Yeah. I just brace on. I told you that yesterday. I just try to brace on and hope the board stays true.
Jeff, a little fortunate that ace-king was good enough.
Haxton giving Gross the, I see how it's going to be, buddy. Look. Ace-jack offsuit for JC Tran. He raises it up
He opens for 25,000. As it folds.
to 25,000.
There we go.
That folds.
Steve Silverman in the big blind, our short stack here. I think normally from the big blind I would defend with Jack-10 offsuit, but since he's the short stack but not by that large of a margin, I wouldn't want to give up any extra chips to put a gap between me and the second shortest stack.
Steve calls out of the big blind.
Silverman has opted for just a call. But look at this gin. An ace and 2 10s. Silverman has JC crushed with trip 10s. JC with just aces up. and both players check.
Conservative but thoughtful check from JC. Relatively dry board and doesn't think he can get much action. I don't like this check on the turn by Steve. I think he's getting a little too tricky planning a check raise.
And Tran not biting, checks back on the turn, and Rivers the best hand with aces full. Disaster for Steven Silverman.
Yeah, this is a huge turn of events here. Steve, by all accounts, must think that his hand is best here, and looks like he's going to come out with a bet. I do think he should be able to get away from the hand, though, when JC moves in, because there's just no way, from Steve's point of view, that JC will be bluffing here.
All in.
And that's exactly the way the script plays out. Silverman bets out, JC moves all in rather short order.
And there are two reasons I think JC is unlikely to be bluffing. One is that it's such a critical moment, and two, it's not that unreasonable that Steve himself has an ace. And if JC were bluffing into an ace, he would just be giving up all of his chips for no reason.
Silverman seems to understand what you do as he lays down. JC picks up a nice pot. We'll see if Steve Silverman can recover from that small misstep as the action continues from Florida. Alpha 8 is brought to you by ClubWPT.com. Fun, exciting poker you can play for free.
We are cruising down Millionaires Row in Fort Lauderdale, where all of these houses are multi-million-dollar mansions. I'm up here with Captain Gary, First Mate Pablo. These guys live the dream, cruising around the canals of Fort Lauderdale all day, every day, and today they're taking us with them.
This is the largest marina south of Annapolis, Maryland.
All the boys come down with all their toys just to show off their yachts. Oh, look at that. What would that be worth?
Yeah, it would be somewhere around 120.
$120 million to buy that yacht.
Steven Spielberg charges his for $1 million a week.
Wow.
So,
$1 million a week.
Yeah, $1 million, but he's a $220 million yacht. The house coming up belongs to Michael Mann, just a one-bedroom house.
I wouldn't mind staying there.
Yeah.
Well, that was an awesome tour, and now let's get back to the poker action.
How come we don't get invites to that stuff?
I know, we're stuck here talking about poker and Lynn's out seeing million-dollar yachts.
I thought we were friends, Gil Martin. As we get a look at the chip counts, Isaac Haxton still with over 600,000, and Steven Silverman very short stack with just over 100. Button is on Matt Glantz, and Steven Silverman will be first to act. Looks down at 9-7 offsuit. Steven, the one-time roommate of Andrew Lucky Chewy Lichtenberg, who also played in this event. Meanwhile, J.C. Tran, four-time World Series bracelet winner, has King 10 offsuit and has raised it up. Making it 25,000 to go. Isaac Haxton with a couple of sixes. Your chip leader thinks it over. He's going to just call from the small blind.
The main reason Ike decides to just call instead of move in is because Jeff Gross has moved up so much in the chip count that now Ike would be putting more at risk by moving in.
So it's heads up to the flop. And that flop, King, King, 4 with a couple of hearts. A pesky one for pocket sixes. JC is flop trip kings, and Ike is staring at a paired board with an undercard to his sixes.
He's probably thinking that it's such a tense moment on the bubble that he has JC out chipped, and that therefore JC will play pretty straightforward. So this bet will give him all the information he needs, rather than just checking and calling and potentially seeing a disastrous turn card that would give JC a better hand.
So this is not necessarily the type of line Ike would take with the pocket sixes, but given the context, he elects to do it this way, and JC is playing straightforward, right away raising up to 125,000 total after the lead for 42. And JC picks up a nice pot.
It's really important to have a good mindset coming in and, good stamina, especially at my age now. I feel like I'm pretty old. I'm 36.
Wow, 36 is old.
What does that make us?
I know.
As the action continues at our final table.
Fold it around to Ike.
Ace-9 suited for Isaac Haxton. And he is going to raise it up, making it 33,000 to go.
Wow,
Ace-King
spot.
offsuit.
Great spot for Steve Silverman. You know, if he had 300 or maybe even 200,000, it might be easier for Ike to get away here. But with just 107,000 chips, under 10 big blinds, there's just no way Ike can fold Ace-9 suited.
And of course, all in and a call. Haxton gets the bad news.
Wish I had more chips. Wish I had a little more chips.
Stranger things have happened. Silverman's tournament life at risk here on the bubble. He is dominating Isaac, heading to the flop, but he does need to hold.
Steve complaining that he didn't have more chips. I think I'd just be happy enough that I got my money in so good here as the short stack.
Flop is a very safe one for ace-king. Neither player connecting with the board. Queen 7-4 rainbow. And the turn card is a 6. All Silverman needs to do is avoid a 9 on the river to double through Haxton and stay alive. And easy enough. 3 on the end. Solidifies the double up.
I think Steve was probably the only person rooting for himself there. All the other players hoping to burst the bubble and guarantee themselves a nice payday.
They do it quietly, though. Well, with that, we do have a new chip leader. Take a look at the board. J.C. Tran has inherited that title with 528,000. That glance in second. Action is on him.
And Ike has managed to move down into 4th place out of our 5 finishers. And with the blinds up on this hand,
all in.
Ike, with 25 big blinds, has decided to move in here with 2 10s. You can see he's not messing around on the bubble, just wants to take the pot pre-flop.
This is a really big all-in pre-flop, though.
Yeah, Ike always has a very strong hand when he does this. I would say 2 9s or ace-queen minimum.
Call.
And JC takes a look at ace-queen and says call.
There will be a new chip leader. Good luck, guys.
Yep.
Wow, when you think about that range that I just described from Ike, ace-queen is probably a fold. And right now, Ike is in the race of his tournament. If he loses it, he will be out and the bubble boy.
And a queen right in the window on the flop. JC jumps out to a huge lead, but Ike knows he can hit a 10 or a jack to take over control of this pot.
Or another 10 to the turn.
Tension mounts, 8 on the turn. And now, our one-time chip leader, Isaac Haxton, needs to hit a 10 or a jack to double up and stay alive. Anything else, and we have burst the bubble. Can Haxton hit? No, he cannot. And that's it. Minus 200K for the effort. And you see him rolling his eyes, and you can't blame him, Olivier.
Yeah, a really tough set of hands there for Isaac Haxton. Probably the toughest player that was remaining. All the other players are just elated to now be guaranteed money and to have one of their toughest competitors out on the bubble. An absolute brutal set of hands for Ike, who was our chip leader with 5 left and now goes out in 5th place with no money.
That is the way the poker cookie crumbles sometimes.
I'm joined by Isaac Haxton. You have been eliminated just shy of the money. I know that's such a tough spot to handle, especially for this amount of money, but you still seem to be in good spirits.
Yeah, you know, you show up for a 20-player tournament, you're going to bubble it about 120 times, so I'm reasonably content with what I did.
All right, well, thank you so much for talking to us. So sorry to see you go.
Find out everything that our players have to say after a bust out. Simply log on to clubwpt.com for an exclusive look at all of our exit interviews from Alpha 8 Florida. Clubwpt.com. Fun, exciting poker you can play for free.
All 4 of these players in the money right now. They can breathe a little bit easier, but the pay jumps are significant, of course. As you get a look at the total prize pool of over $2 million and how it divvies up. And Jeff Gross will begin the action here, laying down 10-3 offsuit. And a premium holding for Steve Silverman, ace-queen suited.
Steve on the button here with about 16 big blinds here.
Is that enough to play with, or does he need to move all in?
I like either, a small raise or just an open shove. I think either play works fine with this hand.
Min raise from Steven, and ace-jack offsuit for JC, who is 3-betting it to a total of 68,000.
Yeah, button versus small blind, ace-queen suited against ace-jack offsuit is really just a cooler. Not much either player can do here besides just put their chips in and hope that their hand either holds up or gets lucky.
All in.
Silverman all in, and is there any chance JC's hand hits the muck?
I don't think so. I think JC is just making sure that
Under 300, right?
Steve has the same number of chips that he thought that Steve did, and it looks like, yeah, he is going to call here and going to get the bad news when Steve flips up ace-queen.
So JC's choice to make a 3-bet there pre-flop was certainly predicated on the understanding that if Silverman played back, he was going to be in a position to call the entire
Right,
stack.
he had a plan. He knew that Steve was likely to either fold or go all in, and he had a plan to call if Steven did go all in, which I think is the exact right way to play this hand. Just a little bit unlucky for JC that Steve has such a big hand on the button.
That's a good card.
That's one of the ones you were thinking of.
That's a good card.
The board is paired on the turn, and Tran can potentially chop if he hits an 8 or a 10 on the end.
Pretty good card on the turn, gives Chan some additional good cards on the river, but the 3 is not one of them, and Steve does double up, moving up from 4th all the way into 2nd place now.
Just do it.
Steven had just about 100,000 in chips at one point in time, and he is up to 520,000 in his stack.
It's really such a confidence boost when you're under 10 big blinds on the bubble, double up twice, get in the money, and now you're in 2nd place. I really look for Steve to make a strong push here at the end.
JC folds. Matt Glantz with ace-9 offsuit raises it up to 35,000.
I think Jeff should at least consider playing queen 10 from the small blind to a button open. I think throwing it away is acceptable some of the time, but definitely should consider playing others.
Well, Silverman does have a bigger stack than he did just a hand ago, right behind Jeff.
35.
He's elected to put some of those newfound chips to work with 6-7 offsuit out of position against Matt. They head to the flop heads up.
And as we've seen before, with such small raises before the flop, the big blind getting such a good price defends with relatively wide range.
5-5 tray on the flop. Silverman checks over to Glantz.
Very dry board here. I expect the pre-flop raiser to bet most of the time, but Matt Glantz checks back. Sometimes, I can't tell if Matt is just really nitty or has a great live sense, because Steve actually did have equity, and as we see by the turn, Steve has now turned the nut straight. A lot of times when the pre-flop raiser checks such a dry board, he has some sort of either showdown value or a plan to try to win the pot later. We'll see if Matt just picked up on something on the flop from Steven, or if he's going to try to make a move or at least see a river card.
Silverman's praying for a call here.
Matt folds.
And Matt will not oblige, getting away from trouble.
Yeah, Matt drawing dead there.
Great instincts by Matt Glantz.
Yeah, again, it's hard to tell. It could just be his conservative nature, but I'm willing to bet that Matt Glantz just had a nice read there on Steve, knew that he had picked up something on the flop, wasn't sure what it was, and just decided to play it cautiously and let it go.
It is important, of course, to make decisions that at times might seem a little bit silly, but are based on the intangibles of the game.
And that's part of the difference between playing poker on the internet and playing it live. You have this additional element when you play live that you just get a sense for the situation, a sense for the player, and you can make kind of higher level decisions based on that.
Now, you've played both online and live. You ever been in a situation where you felt like a guy was looking right through you at a table?
Sure, his name was Phil Ivey.
Those eyes. Glantz folds.
Actions on Gross. It's interesting to note that Jeff Gross folding a raggedy ace on the button. The button is really the strongest position at the table. I think that's too strong of a hand to fold. Maybe Jeff is looking to move up in the pay jump.
King Jack suited for Steven Silverman. Silverman raises.
Small blind.
And we see a raise out of the ace-10 offsuit of J.C. Tran to a total of 41,000. Silverman calls.
King Jack suited plays really well, and I think Steve was willing to take a flop in a limped pot, or, as we've seen, just limp and then call a raise here from J.C.
2 6s and a 4 on the board, similar to the last flop. Silverman checking over to J.C.
Another dry board. Neither player has much equity, but I expect J.C. to bet here.
And J.C. has done just that, betting 45,000 into a pot of 90.
Now, the standard play for Steve would be to just fold. He doesn't have much of a hand, and there's no reason to expect king high to necessarily be good.
Well, for some reason, Steven hasn't found his fold button just yet.
Steve calls.
And instead, he hits call.
So Steven is floating here out of position. He does have 2 overcards and a backdoor flush draw. We'll have to see how the turn plays out and what Steve decides to do on the river.
Floating, of course, calling with the intention of taking the pot away from your opponent on a subsequent street. And the turn is a decent one for Steven Silverman. He picks up a diamond flush draw to go with the 2 overcards and checks it over to JC.
I think with this card, Steven will at least call if JC bets the turn, if not raise. I don't like this card for JC to barrel on the turn. A lot of Steve's flop calling hands have improved. They've either made a pair of 8s or a straight. So JC does elect to bet, but I'm not a fan of this bet when the turn card is an 8.
Well, let's be honest, Silverman's probably not a fan of it either. He would have been more than happy to have JC check behind him and potentially see a river free of charge. But instead, he's faced with a decision, 86,000 to call.
And even though JC is bluffing, he actually does have the best hand. And this is part of the problem with being out of position if you're Steve Silverman. If you don't decide that you want to raise here and decide to just check call, what do you do if you miss on the river?
And those are things that you need to be thinking about as you continue to make decisions throughout a hand of poker.
Right.
What do I do next?
Right, and Steve is such a good player that I can't imagine that he won't have some sort of plan.
And the river puts 4 to a straight out there.
Yeah, the 5 of hearts is a very interesting card. It's a card that's most certainly going to help Steve Silverman's range more than JC's range. But at this point, JC actually has the best hand, and Steve Silverman can't imagine that King Jack is good enough to win. So the only way he can try to win the pot is by leading out into JC. And we see that Steve has now elected to lead into JC, representing the 7. He missed his flush, but he still had a plan to try to win the pot, and out of position, his only option was to just lead right out into JC.
And you see Tran laying down the best hand. Well played by Steven Silverman as he earns a healthy size pot from the chip leader.
Feels very 7-8 of spades-ish.
And that is your new chip leader, Steven Silverman.
Welcome back to the final table of A8 Florida, coming to you from the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. I'm Lynn Gilmartin here with Ali Najad and Olivier Bousquet up in the ClubWPT.com skybox.
Speaking of up, Steven Silverman started this evening's action on the short stack and is now sitting pretty in the chip lead with over 800,000 in front of him.
Yeah, he's been on a roll, both playing well and running well. A dangerous combination for someone as talented as Steve Silverman.
We pick up the action in this particular pot. Silverman has pocket 9s, raised it up from the button to 36,000. Matt Glantz defends with 8-6 suited, and we go to the flop heads up. That flop is Jack 4 deuce, couple of hearts.
And as the blinds have been going up, Matt Glantz has actually fallen into our short stack position, defending here from the big blind with 8-6 suited, also not picking up a lot of equity on this flop.
Both players check the flop. Turn is a queen.
So Steve Silverman deciding to check back on the flop. His hand he thought was strong enough to take a free card, but he didn't want to face a check raise, so he just took a free card.
And the queen, both players checked again. River is a 3.
Yeah, the queen, not a great card for 2-9. Steve electing to check again. I think after seeing 3 checks from Matt, Steve will probably elect to try to get some value out of his pocket pair.
Matt checks it to him. Any chance Glantz could have tried to steal the pot on the river here?
You know, he could have. He did have a 6 in his hand. He could have tried to represent 5-6 or something like that. But I actually like the idea of, you know, defending to a small raise with a hand that can flop a bunch of equity, not hitting anything, and then not going after chips that kind of don't belong to you. Staying disciplined, so to speak.
Well, discipline is certainly a good word for Matt Glantz. Calls Lafayette Hill, Pennsylvania home. Temple University MBA in finance on his resume, along with some very good finishes over the course of his career, including the 20,000 euro buy-in high roller event in London, where he finished first for $832,000. As we see Glantz with 10-8 suited, pushing all in from the small blind against Jeff Gross's big blind, and Jeff has an ace.
Yeah, I mean, with Matt Glantz stack here, you can't really fault him for moving in with 10-8 suited. It's definitely mathematically justified. I personally would probably have preferred just calling. It's a hand that plays very well before the flop.
All right, sorry, I'm not net rolling. I'm going to call, but I don't.
Gross makes the call, takes a look at 10-8 suited. He'll be happy to see those 2 cards.
It's not at least ace-5. I'd rather call or 4 than that.
I understand.
I thought we talked about this. I don't, you know, I like the easy decisions.
Well, we all like the easy decisions, Jeff. Ace 8-7 on the flop, middle pair for Matt.
Saw the 7 of hearts first, didn't like that.
You want the 9 of hearts on the turn?
I like Matt a lot, but I don't know. That seems like a little aggressive. Maybe like a 5 or no, like a 6 or something.
Here comes the turn card. It's a 9. Glantz is now open-ended to go with his 8s. 10 is no good. That will give Gross a straight, but a
Also
6
a very nice guy,
or an 8. would be a good card. So would a jack. Can Glance hit, or is he headed home? Show us the river. It's a 4 of diamonds, and that is the end of the evening for Matt Glance. One-time chip leader will shake some hands and head over to the cage where he'll be collecting a cool $243,180.
I thought Matt Glance played really well throughout this tournament. At the end, when the blinds got up, you know, there wasn't really much he could do. He didn't get a lot of good hands, and he did his best.
Well, Matt, congratulations. $243,000. You have won in 4th place. You came into this final table as a chip leader. Tell us about your journey here.
It was a great time, great experience with Alpha 8. A bunch of real great guys that played this event. I mean, I know them all, and you're playing with the best in the world, so you have to make a lot of decisions they're not used to making, and this is a more challenging experience.
So we're down to just 3 players at this point, Olivier. Has that changed the action at all?
Yeah, every time you lose a player, the hand ranges start to get a little bit wider. I think as the blinds being as high as they are, this probably favors both Steve and Jeff, a little bit more experience playing shallow than JC.
Of course, when you're three-handed, you're either on the button or in one of the blinds, and JC Tran finds himself in the small blind here with King 5 suited. He raises it up to 35,000. Jeff Gross is defending with 10-9 offsuit. And the flop. Ace 10-9, 2 hearts.
Absolutely huge flop for both players. Obviously, Jeff Gross flopping bottom 2 pair, and JC flopping the nut flush draw. I wouldn't be shocked if all the chips got in the middle right here on the flop.
Well, there's currently 76,000 in the pot. Yeah, JC is going to lead out for 41,000, and now Gross has a number of options.
Yeah, if I'm Jeff Gross, I don't mind just calling here and seeing another card. Obviously, there's a lot of potential draws, but you disguise the strength of your hand when you do that. At the same time, raising is fine too, just trying to get it all in right here on the flop.
And Gross does raise, making it 112,000 total, which puts the ball back in JC's court.
All in.
JC
Call.
all in.
And he does move all in here, so JC gonna have to hit a heart or 2 running cards to make a bigger 2 pair. Otherwise, he's gonna be out of the tournament.
Yeah, Gross snap called the all in. And JC is looking for a heart and hits one.
7 of hearts.
Heart flushes have been really, really hot in this tournament.
He's got the nut flush, but it's not over yet. He also needs to avoid a 10 or a 9 on the river, otherwise his day is through. And a queen of spades is not it, as JC Tran hits his flush and snaps Jeff Gross's 2 pair to double into the chip lead.
What a tough spot for Jeff Gross here. Now, from his point of view, he's in a great position to knock JC out and have the chip lead going heads up. Instead, he doubles JC up, and now he himself is the short stack.
Do you know when to hold 'em and when to fold 'em? Prove your poker supremacy and rise to the top of the ClubWPT.com leaderboard.
Play all the poker you want, 100% free, today and every day at ClubWPT.com.
Welcome back to the world's most exclusive poker room, WPT Alpha 8. Tonight's event is coming from the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in South Florida.
3 players remain, and that's what it looks like. JC Tran with $1 million in front of him, Steve Silverman with $844, and the short stack of Jeff Gross takes a peek down at King 10 offsuit.
Jeff sitting on 16 big blinds. We'll have to see how he decides to play it.
Can he limp? Can he just min raise?
He could probably consider either one of those. I don't think folding is an option, but looks like Jeff has decided to go all in here with King 10 offsuit.
Makes quick work of the Jack 10 offsuit for Steve Silverman, and it's over to Queen 9 suited, showing pause in JC Tran's hand.
Queen 9 suited feels close, but ultimately I don't think you can really call here. Maybe if he had Queen Jack suited, definitely King Queen, but Queen 9 suited is kind of on the borderline.
You have Queen 10?
Worse.
Oh, okay, well, you're a good four. What's that?
I just don't think, I can't find where I can really dominate.
Yeah, I wanted you to call after you, when you were like, it's a good one, and then I knew you didn't have an ace, so I was like, I had a king high. Probably better king than you, I'm guessing.
No, I didn't have a king.
Oh, yeah, I had king high. I kind of wanted to call. Wouldn't mind getting off to the races again.
Blinds and antes have gone up to 10 and 20,000.
Seems
The
fair.
3K ante, diminishing the value of every stack at the table, including that of Jeff Gross, as he looks down at King 10 offsuit.
All in.
And he's going to move it all in.
With the blinds moving up, Jeff sitting on 12.5 big blinds. Not a lot of choices with this hand. It looks like he's run into a monster hand in the small blind of Steve Silverman.
All in.
And Silverman moves all in over the top.
Wow, this is it right here. This might define how good I'm gonna run.
And JC gets to play the squeeze game.
Oh, I thought you'd already looked at this.
No, I haven't looked.
Show me ace 10, or ace jack. Oh, that's not good. That's a good hand. Taxi cab. Where's Perky? We got taxi cab.
Steve Silverman is dominating Jeff Gross here.
In Houston, that's the nuts. I know that. I can't lose that. And if we're in Houston, I can't lose it.
I think I got the queen 5, I believe.
Well, it's King 10 off against Ace King. Jeff Gross is in bad shape for his tournament life.
Come queen and end it.
And he's in even worse shape now.
Oh, wow, he's got the club too. That's a tough one. That's gonna be a tough one to win. Let's do a jack first.
He's asking for a jack, and he gets one. Looking for a queen to double up and stay alive.
Queen. $4,000 tip to you with the queen, red queen.
Oh, it's a king, a pair, but not a big enough pair. And Jeff Gross will shake a couple of hands and head to the cage to pick up a very healthy $364,770.
Can't be too disappointed if you're Jeff Gross. Could easily have bubbled this tournament, but instead picks up over $350,000.
Yep.
Jeff Gross, your biggest career cash in a tournament. Congratulations. How are you feeling right now?
You know, I think I ran okay, and I think I played well, and I'm happy, and amazing tournament. I'm going to try to play all the Alpha 8s this year, and so this was a lot of fun.
Of course. Well, it was a lot of fun watching you, and you, of course, are a brilliant player. You've done yourself proud, and the rest of us. It was great to watch you. We'll see how it all plays out when we come back.
Welcome back to the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in South Florida, where we give you a look at our inaugural WPT Alpha 8 trophy and, of course, the bundle of cash that these two are playing for. And Olivier Bousquet, you know a little something about Steven Silverman. My guess is you're favoring him in the spot?
Yeah, I have to say, you know, Steve has played a lot of heads-up hands online. He was one of my toughest competitors a few years ago before he took a break from poker. I'm sure he's happy that he's come back. He's had a great year thus far.
$891,000 to first place, $526,000 to second. And there are the chip counts.
Even though they're even in chips, I would have to give Steve the edge here.
As we begin heads-up competition, 10-8 suited to start heads-up play for Steve Silverman. He min-raised it.
Yeah, reasonable defend here from JC. I think mixing it up between 3 bets and defends are pretty good.
And JC chose to just defend with King-Queen offsuit. Board is 8-4-7, a good one for Silverman.
Doesn't really flop much for JC here.
He checks it over to Silverman, who checks back.
Yeah, that's surprising. This is a perfect spot, I think, for Steve to just start getting value from his top pair. And instead, a queen has turned, and the hand has flipped into JC's favor.
86,000 in the middle, and JC is going to bet out.
After Steve checks, JC elects to lead when he turns a pair of queens. I like that. That's exactly how I would play the hand.
It could look very bluffy.
Yeah, and also you're just trying to build a pot. There's only 2 betting streets left. Pair of queens, definitely strong enough to bet for value.
Well, Silverman called to 51,000, and the river, another queen. That's a bad card for Steve Silverman for more than one reason.
Yeah, Steve now going to feel pretty good about his pair of 8s. He now actually beats hands that he wasn't beating, hands like 7-8, 7-4, 8-4, and it actually makes it less likely that JC himself has a queen. It's going to be very tough, maybe even a mistake, for Steve to consider folding an 8 here.
138,000 to call. That's not a small amount.
And I like that JC didn't get cute and try to check 3 queens. He just let out on the river, trying to get extra value, and looks like he did.
Yeah, Silverman's going to be a little bit disgusted there. A case of him maybe getting a little too fancy for his own good?
Yeah, potentially. I'm not sure exactly what he was thinking on the flop. I think his hand is a little bit too vulnerable to just check back, and definitely worth a bet with top pair.
It is so tempting to get tricky, especially when you're playing against a world-class opponent and you feel like a very straightforward strategy is going to be transparent.
That's true. Sometimes it can become a leveling war between these two players.
It's a term we've been hearing more and more in poker. Explain that to me, leveling.
It basically means you think your opponent knows how you play and how you think, so you try to go up a level and try to exploit the information that you think he has on you.
Ace-Jack suited for J.C. Tran on the button. He min-raises, and it's 2 nines for Steve Silverman, who 3-bets it to a total of $135,000.
Two monster hands here, Ace-Jack suited and pocket nines. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets all in here. It's really going to depend how JC decides to play his Ace-Jack suited. I wouldn't mind if he wanted to call the 3-bet, maybe even 4-bet and then call an all-in.
All in.
Call. Looks like he's decided to go all in himself.
Snap call from Steve Silverman, and these two turn him up. They look pretty relaxed out there, Olivier.
Yeah, I mean, when you get to these stakes in poker, especially heads up when you're not that deep, you just know that it's potential that you're going to get in for most of the chips as a race.
That's exactly what's happened here. The board reads 4, 5, 7, a good one for 2 nines.
Makes it more fun when I hit it and turn in the river, right?
So far, so good as the turn pairs the board with a 4, and now J.C. Tran is down to 6 outs once to double up and stay alive. He cannot hit. Silverman continues now with a massive chip lead after sticking J.C. Tran on the short stack, and Steven Silverman will be first to act.
On.
And he's going to lean on him with Queen 9 suited here from the button. Queen 8 off for J.C.
This is kind of a big all-in by Steve Silverman. Definitely justifiable. I think Queen 8 is a little bit weak here. JC could have been a little bit more patient. Also a little bit unlucky that Steve had him dominated with a bigger queen.
I would chop it. I don't know anything greedy.
I'll swap a flush. That'd be cool.
Pair the board. Sometimes.
Can he make it happen with Queen 8? Apparently he can, as he hits the 3-ball corner pocket. 8 right there on the flop.
Steve not dead, though. He's got a 9 or a jack that could give him the lead.
Got shot straight draw. Oh, and there is the 9, and Silverman has now regained the lead in this particular pot.
Jack for the chop.
You were calling for the chop.
A jack would make this a chop pot, and 8 would give JC the win outright. Instead, it's a queen. Both players make 2 pair. Silverman's is best, and he is your first ever WPT Alpha 8 champion.
Congrats to Steve. He really played great throughout the tournament. And you can see what a roller coaster ride that is tournament poker. Steve Silverman at one point under 10 big blinds on the bubble seemed like he might not even cash and instead becomes our first champion.
Steven, you are the Alpha 8 here in Florida. Tell us about your experience at this final table.
And the players that made the final table overall, great players. I mean, everyone that played the tournament was really great. And
Okay, of course he gets distracted by this thing. It's huge. Do you have space at home for that?
I'll make space. I'll find a headphone over.
I got a lot of space in my room. You guys don't play.
Well, that wraps up our coverage here at the Seminole Hard Rock. So for Ali Najad, Olivier Bousquet, I'm Lynn Gilmartin, and we'll see you at the next Alpha 8.